I think the first thing I'm going to do is just put a little bit of, well, this is GT85, I'm not advertising them. It's just what I got at hand. And then often you'll find that reenactors will have two things in our leather pouch or our shoulder bag, a little bit like this one here. We'll have one of these little blocks and a file, because you have to check your weapons after a battle. And some events, you may do 1 or 2 battles in a day. You may have some small skirmishes. So what we have to do is just check the weapons and make sure that there's nothing on the sharp edge which is going to cut somebody like a burr. Because when you get a axe, fighting axe or sword, for instance, if this metal is a little bit softer than one of the swords I'll be using, like this one here, then you have to make sure that you look after your edge and you make sure it's not got any sharp burrs on. And then generally within the reenactment world, you'll have master at arms who will actually check this. And certainly the top area, it's a little bit rough, so that needs filing down slightly in the future. And I don't have a file on me. That's the one thing I've left. Looking at some knives on. Oh no, I can see one on the floor. So I thought I'd just do a little bit of maintenance of the kit whilst I live stream. I hope you've been enjoying the recent videos we've been putting out. So we've got a wave there and an emoji. So lovely, And I must try to get back into live streaming on a more regular basis. I'm just not organised enough as an individual with my neurology to plan organisation of live streaming. And then some days I just get to the evening and I'm tired and knackered because I've been grafting all the time. But so I wish I had some sandpaper, which I've left somewhere, but never mind. But yeah, and we'll keep checking your comments. If you've got any questions you want to ask, I'll fundamentally answer any question. If I don't know the answer, and I don't know it, but so this is what I'm doing. I'm just polishing. I'm trying to reduce this little bit of rust, because that would not pass inspection. They will bring that up, because the one thing you don't want on your weapon is rust, because that's, you cut somebody with it by accident and that can lead to infection. So we like to keep them clean as possible. But of course, different reenactment groups have different standards, but I think it's important within the world of reenactment and living history that we have high standards, especially this day and age, because we have to safeguard the hobby and we have to safeguard each other as well. And especially with these days, as the police are getting more likely to confiscate weapons, there's been quite a few people had their weapon collections confiscated, even though they're fundamentally antiques. And somehow I don't think, within some of these cases, that the police are going to have much of a leg to stand on, and they will get the weapons back. And certainly within the UK, there's things you're not allowed to have and there's things you are allowed to have. And, I know my local police officer very well over the years, because I used to be a shotgun owner and I had for many years a license to handle explosives, a black powder license we call it. So you get to know your local Bobby, and they certainly know what I do for a living, and the fact that we've got some lovely weapons in the house. So we've got a comment here. Let's just go back. So Duft Punk Nixon says, greetings from Poland. What's your favourite weapon? Well, I think at the moment my favourite weapon on my table will probably be this one here, which is a Romano-British or a very early Anglo-Saxon sword, probably looking at the 6th to early 7th century, and it's really nice. It's got a lovely leather. This came from Celtic Web Merchant and was on offer at the time, and I couldn't resist buying it. And I love the handle, all made from wood, quite unique. And we always think about handles being made from metal, the pommels and the crossguards, but sometimes they was actually made from wood. And I also love this embossing, how these little dots have been knocked out. So this is probably brass I would say, and it's being plated at some point during its process. And let's just try to pull the sword out, because it is a good fit. And that there is a very nice blade. It's not, I know it's classed as a sharp, but you couldn't cut your hand on it because it's not got an edge. So often within the world of reenactment, you can't really buy a sharp weapon. You have to sharpen it afterwards, especially from abroad, because customs don't like sharp things coming through customs. So although it's got an edge to it, and I could certainly sharpen it, which I may do in the future, so I can demonstrate this chopping through various things like bottles of water and so forth. I think that's a very nice weapon, and it's different. It's also been nicely put together as well. A nice wide blade. It doesn't have a traditional fuller, because the fuller is fundamentally flat on this, but I think that's very nice. And whilst you're here from Poland, because recently I bought this sword off eBay, and I wonder if you guys, I have to show you upside down, do you know this maker's mark? Because I've been told it is a Polish manufacturer of swords. So if anybody can recognise that maker's mark, and I think it's always very nice when you get a maker's mark, but it's a very rare thing, the way I see it, because I think out of all my swords, and I don't know how many I own, because I own too many, I think that's the only one with a maker's mark on it, and so that makes it quite unique. So that's probably my most favourite weapon. So let's just put this back in. And it's a really nice tight fit as well. And what you could do, you could actually thread some, some nice, you get some, like leather, you can tie it around here. You could have a piece tie to keep it in the scabbard, but because it's such a tight fit, it's not going to come out fundamentally. So, but the only downside about this is that when they made this scabbard, they lined it with a foam lining instead of using a natural material like fleece, wool, or the best one would be felt. And I think that's a real shame, because when you put oil on the blade, the oil isn't going to take into the foam, and it'll be a damn shame to take it apart just to fix that problem. And if I can take it out again, you might just get to see inside there's like foam. This is what keeps the blade really tight. So traditionally they would have used, and my favourite would be, some what did I call it a minute ago? Felt would be what I would use, and I have used quite a few times in my sheaths. So when I make like for this one here, my first sword I ever had, I made this many years ago, this sheath, it's lined with some felt and it's been bonded in, so that my blade is always oily, because the oil goes into the felt, and therefore you're never going to end up with a rusty sword. Well, you shouldn't do anyway. And that's probably ultimately my favourite sword. So yes, so that's a wool fund, right? Thank you very much for letting me know, because it's really nice to actually know the make of that sword. I can give them a proper credit for the sword. And I bought it with a job lot of weapons I saw on eBay, and I bought it very quickly when it came online. And it was a really good price. So thank you for letting me know about that, because that's very much appreciated. And then Dual Punk Nixon says, how much does that thing weigh? Well, I couldn't really tell you really. It definitely weighs a few pounds, but you get used to it. And I think at some point I will make a series of videos where I weigh some of my different weapons and my ring shirts, and we'll give you the precise weight in kilograms and pounds, but without having some scales. It's hard to tell, but it does, they will weigh a few pounds, but you get used to them. I mean, the thing about this and the scabbard, you've got to be so careful when you have it on your belt. You don't have it too low down, because what you don't want is to trip over it, because trust me, it's happened to me a few times. Your sword is hanging down and it gets in between both of your legs when you're running, and before you know it, you're on the ground. So it definitely pays to have it high up and fastened to your belt and not slung too low. And that's often a mistake novice makes when people get a new sword, or especially when it's on a baldric. So I like to have a sword which hangs from your belt a bit like this one. I'm just being careful not to knock my tee over. So this one just hangs off your bolt, and that's ideal. But do have a good strong bolt and make sure it's tight, because the other thing you don't want to happen when you're running around the battlefield, and I've experienced this myself and seen it many a time, is that your bolt starts coming down and you're constantly tightening your bolt up. So getting used to your kit, knowing going that extra notch on your bolt, even if you get somebody to help you to pull your bolt through and get to that extra notch. And that's the same with your trousers as well. The amount of times I've seen people marching and the trousers they're wearing are coming down, and I've had this. It's not only it's embarrassing because you're constantly pulling your trousers up, but it's it's awkward. So my number one tip for that is have a separate bolt, and you just bolt your trousers up, and that will always guarantee that your trousers are never going to come down, even if it's a modern bolt and it's hiding underneath your kit, because fundamentally we don't often see the top of people's trousers unless they're going bare-chested, because tunics are longer than the top of where your trousers are. So yeah, there's a few little hints and tips. So let's have a look. So didn't I complain about the scabbard in the video about Thor? I think it was funny. Oh yeah, I've made that many videos. I often forget, I'll have to think that what video that is. Yeah, I mean, some scabbards are good and some scabbards are bad. And sometimes you get a sword and you get a scabbard and you think, well, yeah, that definitely needs remaking or a whole entire new one. And it's amazing how many times you buy a sword, like this one, for instance, another one from Celtic Web Merchant. I think I paid £60 for this because it was an offer, but it never came with a sheath or a scabbard. So again, this is another job in the future for myself to do, and this is a little bit later than our period in history. It's a later Anglo, or it's a later Norman one. Whether it's Anglo-Norman, it's probably not, because I think by the time to get to that sword, the Anglo-Normans have just become the Normans. But yes. And we'll go back to your comments. This is what the video is about. Yeah, so thank you for letting me know about that swamp sack. So I really do appreciate letting me know the name of that. And it does, when you look at it, it does look like a W. So I think you are right. So I'm now going to, at some point, remember and do some investigation, and perhaps buy some more things from him. It's not a bad sword, actually, for the money I paid for it, and it's definitely been used quite a bit. And again, it's got a bit of a rough spot there, so we'll put a little bit of oil on that to start the process of cleaning the sword up, and then it takes a lot of time, going along and polishing it on camp and making sure, and then it starts to spread. And I don't, oh yes, I do. Then you wipe it off and you have a look. So normally what I always have in my bag is a little rag which I can oil up, and it's always oily. I can wipe my weapons, and it's actually quite amazing. Just a little bit of work now, it's already starting to clean up, and we'll do some more, because especially when you have a collection like mine, because I just spend all year, and by the time I get to the end of the year, I'll have to start all over again and going through all my kit. So whether it's sewing things up and repairing a little bit of seams, or whether it's cleaning your leather work and oiling your leather, because it's so important if you got leather to keep it clean and to keep it moist. And I like Neat's foot oil is my favourite. So yes, that's already improving already, which is good, which is what I want. And I'm not fought with this sword yet. I'm thinking, when it comes to this sword, this is the sword I'm going to most probably let Halfdan use, because it's the latest sword. I'll probably start him off on a bigger sword and a better sword with more of a cross guard, and then gradually, get him down to that sword, and then he can have it as his own personal sword to use, is what I'm thinking. So I do have my favourite axe on the table by chance. So Feather Dino, this is probably my most favourite axe I own, and I've got no idea who made it. I think this could be an early Paul Binns, but I could be mistaken. It could be a White Rose Armoury one, for instance, which is a armoury from Sheffield. It could be just somebody put it together. But I think that's probably my most favourite axe. Apart from the two wedges, which are modern, this would normally have a wooden wedge. And I like it when the handle or the haft sticks out of the axe, like this one here. I think that's a little bit more authentic than having it flush. So this would be classed as proud. So it's sitting above. And again, because of the friction, it doesn't have a split in it, because you don't always need a split. But it does have a little bit of a wedge. You can see where somebody made a little bit of a wedge just to tighten it up. And that will make a difference. But this is probably my most favourite axe, and I reckon this is probably looking about 40 years old at least, maybe a bit older. You know, it could be older than me, because some of my kit, you know, a lot of it's second hand I brought from Take, the first channel host, and you know, you'd be wondering now what that means. Turn that over. I'll talk about that another day. So some of it could be very old, because Take and Neil and Eggle, they all kind of started in the same period in the early 80s. So, you know, when I was a wee baby, they was reenacting the Norse warriors and Saxons. And many years later, I joined the hobby and got to know those guys. And I was talking to a guy the other day who saw a video on Facebook of Eggle, and he said, "Oh, that's Rune Egg." So I didn't know that. So that's another nickname he had. He never told me about, Rune Egg, and that's with 2 G's. And I thought that's quite interesting. So let's just go back to your comments. But it depends. I think you know, your most favourite axe is the axe you're using at the time. You know, the axe you're wearing on your bolt. And this one's slightly, you know, top heavy. For me, it's okay. If it's any heavier, it will probably be too heavy. But this is a really good axe for grabbing shields. And the amount of times I've used it, and we always think about, you know, holding the axe at the back, but actually you can also fight with your hand further up, and I've seen quite a few people do that. Whether that was done back in the day, I don't know. Probably to a certain degree, and especially if your handle broke and you got half a handle, because they do break in battle. I mean, I've seen them breaking reenactment, let alone using, you know, back in the day. And it does have a really nice pattern to the handle, very stripy. So I don't know what wood this is not ash, and it could be oak, it could be walnuts. It's something very different, because I don't often see this kind of a stripy look. And I must say, or whether it's just been put in there after and it's like a dye, I couldn't really tell you really, but I do like it. And you know, it's so important that you have a nice handle and it feels nice in the hand. And I wish I had another one just like it, because I'd sharpen it and have a sharp version. But this one I'm never going to sharpen. Some of my combat axes over the years I have sharpened, because they're just too heavy, they're too big, they're too brutal, but they make great, you know, chopping axes. And you know, you compare these two heads, and maybe this is a Wolf Thunder one as well, because that came with the same lot. But you know, it's a big difference. And of course, back in the day, this would have been a point. So imagine a point, a razor sharp edge. You know, these were lethal weapons. You know, the point would have continued down probably another inch, and you know, maybe inch and a half. You know, 4 or 5 centimeters. But yeah, that's probably my most favourite axe, and I've had it for so many years. It's you know, it's done me proud over the years, and I really like it. And you can never own enough axes. I mean, this one needs cleaning up as well. So I'll put a bit of oil on that, and I'll do a bit more work on this one whilst I'm sitting down at my medieval Viking table. Because all throughout the winter, I've been trying to reorganise my filming room, because you know, I have a whole entire room dedicated just to all my medieval things, and it's got like 3 areas I can film in. So it just makes life a bit easier. And yeah, you know, it's improving. It's getting rid of it. because we know back in the day that the medieval times we had sandpaper because they had the ability to grind sand down into a very, very fine grain, and they will get, you know, a thin leather, and they'll bond the sand onto the leather and therefore invent sandpaper, or sand leather, perhaps we should call it. And I really like to see that. I've never seen it done authentically and reproduced. So Feather Dino says the wood grain is awesome, reminiscent of flame maple, and the hammer marks on the axe head gives it a lot of character. Well, yes, because you know it's been used. It's had an awful lot of use, and this is one of the axes from Tyrkir. So Tyrkir was a professional, full-time Norse warrior who used to go around the school systems teaching children about Vikings, and he would dress up with Njal, and they did that since the 80s for many, many years. So this would have been one of the many axes they would have used, and you know they put on displays of fighting as well as craft and talking about the history, and that is why partly Graham and Tyrkir has such a great voice, because it's years and years of practice of being in front of an audience dressed like this. But yeah, I just love the marks, you know, and I've had some people say, well, why don't you polish it up and get them out? But that will get rid of the character, and I don't want to get rid of the character because it takes a lot to get a brand new axe to look like this, because that's years and years of use. And I do agree on the wood, I just really like it. And again, you can tell with the amount of damage, so it's had a lot of impact over the years. You know, this section tends to get impacted in, so it becomes a bit tougher. It's got a nice sound to it as well, which is also nice. And you know, so it's got a nice sound to it, a nice ring. So you know it's a good handle. And you know, there's nothing really I could do to improve it. Whether it's slightly big, no, I don't think it is, because I've seen much bigger, authentic, original axes on this. Some of them can be, you know, 30 centimeters long, some of the medieval axes, especially if you look at some of the ones from Gotland or Norway or Sweden, for instance. So, you know, an axe can be as big as you want or as small as you want, but it depends on what job it has to do, because primarily this is for chopping wood and not for chopping people. But, you know, if you can't afford a sword, but, you know, you may be a farmer, but you probably would have an axe. But you would start with a spear, and your axe will be your last resort, because you want that distance at first in the shield wall with the spears, because that will eliminate a lot of people. And then when the combat gets too close and you can't really use a spear, especially if you so close in the shield wall, you got to use your spear going down. If you've got a 9-foot spear, you can't do it with a 9-foot spear, but you can with a, you know, a shorter spear, like 5 or 6 foot. So this is your last resort, and it takes a lot of training as well to get used to these weapons. And you know, you can never own enough of these weapons as well. So then also you have to make sure that you treat the wood. So linseed oil is the best thing I put on my wood. It's got to be raw linseed oil. It's fantastic. It will keep it moist. It will keep it strong, because you know these will get brittle. They will dry up. And what happens when they dry up and they lose the moisture? They're more likely to have snaps and breaks in them from combat. So this is why not only do you have to look after the axe head, you have to look after the handle as well. So, you know, and linseed oil isn't too much. You know, I do need to buy some actually. And there's a few other things you could use. You could use a natural beeswax oil. You can make something yourself as well. I mean, they would have known all of these amazing little tricks which we've lost to history. But it's not just about looking after the axe head, it's about looking after the handle. And that's a really nice light axe. I mean, that's a really comfy one to fight with if you're brand new. And does have a nice beard as well. And I do love a bearded axe. So then we have the other one which came with it. This is slightly more angular. So I don't know whether these have been put together by somebody, because often modern manufacturers, what they'll do, they'll have a design for an axe and they'll have it laser cut out with the whole profile, including the bit which they're going to, you know, work, heat and knock over and roll together. So, you know, they'll have the axe made and it'll be, you know, plasma cut or laser cut, which is not, you know, not difficult to do or to get done, and not very expensive. And then they would, you know, heat them up, knock them over, and put them together. So sometimes when you look at axes, you can tell, and I can tell on this section that this has rolled. So this has been rolled together with, you know, by somebody. So this is probably an amateur made axe, I would say, but I could be wrong. And I do like the bit of leather on it, which is something I don't really have in my collection. So this is new as well. And this is there fundamentally to protect it. Now, back in the day, they probably wouldn't have had this because a sharp sword and axe is going to chop through it. But in a reenactment terms, that's going to protect your axe and stop it from getting damage on this section here. So, and you can tell when you look at it, it's had a lot of impact over the years. So again, it's been used. Somebody's had a right good go on the battlefield with this. And this is a really nice hooking weapon. This has more of a smaller hook, but both are very effective. Would you carry two axes into battle? Well, probably not, no. Unless you're very, very rich. And sometimes I do, as a reenactor, I'll have a spare axe on my back belt because I've been in battles and I've dropped my axe, and I've been so thankful that I've got a spare second axe. But often as reenactors, we do go a little bit over the top by having too many weapons, maybe too many knives. And don't forget, you know, a lot of people would have had a short knife hanging from the belt because that's what eating with, maybe. And then they'd have a much larger fighting knife. So, yeah, but it depends on what money you got and whether you can afford such things. And then Swamp Sack says, Folk Roll Spade. I'll have to look that up. Do you have any more questions? Gradually, I'm working this film studio. I'm going to try to develop the back. At the moment, I've got a picture on the wall. This is another project for another day. But it'd be amazing to fund a longhouse and have one built down the garden, because I think I've certainly got the room. And then it'll be a really good film studio to film from. And then probably my favourite lang sacks I've got on me at the moment is this one from Gotland. And I just love the bonework and the ring and dot pattern. It's not the longest lang sacks in the world. I never fought with this one so far. So that'll be interesting to test this out in a video. And, you know, I've had it, I don't know now, probably about a year or two. And again, it needs a slight bit of polish. But especially if you get your fingers and you put your fingers on the blade, you're not careful. If you've got sweaty, greasy fingers, it's going to leave finger marks. So this is why when you touch your blade, and preferably not a sharp one, you always touch it by the edge and not by the flat. I mean, in fact, you can probably see some finger marks on it. I can. So this needs, you know, polishing up, and a bit of the old oil does help. But this is what we have winter for, because winter is that time, you know, to stay in your longhouse and manage and look after your kit and get it ready for the season where you'll be raiding and possibly fighting. And that's so true in the modern sense of reenactment as well, because, you know, we've kind of finished after Hastings is generally, I would say, the last event in the UK in October, and then November and December, that's your winter months. Yeah, if you're lucky, you may get together and do some battle practice with your group. You know, maybe you have a indoor area like a big hall or sports hall you practice in. I mean, unlike some of the other periods of history like World War II or the 18th and 19th century, where they are primarily determined by the weather and the seasons, as a Dark Age medieval reenactor, back in the day, you know, your first battle practice would be the first Sunday of the month. And if you're lucky and the weather don't affect you, and if you're practicing outside, you could practice throughout the whole year. And back in the day, we used to practice about a mile up the road, up the local woods, and people and the public would be walking around and see all these crazy Vikings. In fact, now and again, when I tell people locally, oh, I dress as a Viking, they'll say, oh, you're not one of those crazy people who used to dress as a Viking and run around the woods in Alistair. Oh yes, that was us. You know, a whole group of us. And of course, it was like it's a park, so it's public land. But what we did is that many years ago we contacted the council and we told them what we're going to do. We got insurance as a group, so they got no problem there. So we did seek permission. So, for instance, you know, if you're a group and you know you got a really nice park nearby you, you know, public domain park, just speak to your local park people. Say, you know, is it okay? A few of us get together and have a battle practice, because then that gives you, you know, the right to go there. And you know, if anybody a little bit PC or funny phones the police and say there's some crazy people running around the park with weapons, then also, you know, it gives you the chance to say, well, yeah, we got permission from the council or from the park owner. And sometimes it's also worth just letting your local police station know that, you know, now and again you get together and you do battle practice on the park, and generally they're going to be fine with that, because it's always good to cooperate and let these organisations know rather than not, because the last thing you want to do as a written actor is to get your group and the hobby into dispute over something maybe trivial. So see if we've got any more questions. I don't know if the questions are catching up at the moment. One of the things I'm trying to get on the channel is 4,000 hours of watch time. I'm about just over 1,200 hours away. So the one thing you can do at the moment is to share our long form videos. This is why I've been concentrating these last couple of months filming a lot of long form content, so that I can knock out a few shorts videos every day. On most days I can put out at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock a long form video. So I think tomorrow the long form video is probably going to be the 13,000 celebration video, which is where we unbox something medieval, something a little bit later than our era, because at some point when I've got the money and the coin, I'm going to start developing, you know, other medieval impressions. And probably for the first time I'll have money where I can say, right, I need to buy some wool, let's build up a 6th century early Anglo-Saxon migrational impression, you know, and get a Sutton Hoo helmet would be nice, and try to build up a Sutton Hoo impression as well, and then be a little bit more specific on camera what I wear, because one of the reasons why every time you see me on camera I'm wearing something different is because of the thumbnails. I don't want all the thumbnails to be of me wearing the same clothes all the time, so I try to put a lot of effort into you know, making thumbnails. Oh, we have a lovely comment here from Leonard, the Old English. He says, hello, how are you, my friend? I've been seeing your pictures of you in your suit, and one of the very first subscribers to the channel back in 2017, you know, 9 years ago nearly. Can you believe it? And he says, looking very stylish. Well, I do try. I mean, I got my Thor's hammer and a bit of a coat. It's a bit cold in the house. I don't really put the heating on. It's amazing when I get cold, I put on a couple of my Viking clothes and I soon get warm. But I find it difficult to get warm in modern clothing. And again, it shows you that we've lost that ability within the modern world to have proper wool clothing. So it does keep you warm, and you know, a lot of this clothing will be older than some of you guys, because some of it will go well back into the 80s, and I think it also demonstrates that if you look after it, it will look after itself and it will survive a long time. But I hope you're doing well. I mean, I have to check out your channel. If you ever want to learn to speak Anglo-Saxon, then do check out Leonard Old English. I'll say one of the best guys on the internet for learning Old English. I mean, I struggle some days to speak normal English, let alone English. Sorry, thank you, Steve. And you know, and it's all about, and it is about the kind words, isn't it? It's all about looking after each other and spreading the knowledge, and you know, giving a shout out to the small guys. I had it the other day, somebody on the channel, you're trying to get to 50 subscribers, you know, asked if I could give them a subscribe, so I did, and gave them a little bit of advice, because it's also about helping each other. And so many YouTubers, they get famous and they get big, and then they forget about the small guys, because we all start off with 0 subs. We all end up trying to get 150 subs, 100, trying to get your first 500 subs and 1,000, and your first 1,000 is probably the most difficult amount to get. But if you keep putting videos out, if you keep trying to improve what you do and your content, and you keep reading and learning, then you do build up that fan base. And I think for me, YouTube has been a really wonderful and amazing thing. And we've achieved millions of views. And I know we don't have Eggle on the channel no more. Since he's passed away, but I know he'll be looking down and he'll be saying, we're doing a wonderful, great job. And certainly, one of the few last times I spoke to him, he was, and about his situation. He wanted to be remembered on the channel, which is what we're doing as well. So we have another comment here from Chad M7371. So what was the horn with the cork originally used for, the one in your leather Viking chest? I am going to make a video on that this week, and it will be in a long form. So I don't want to give it away yet in this live stream, but nobody so far has got it right. And it may be classed as a reenactorism. It may not be. It's got a very specific use. All I can say is it's there to protect something and protect you from something, but I don't want to fundamentally give too many clues away. I will give one clue away though about what that mystery item is, and I'm going to say one word: Silverdale, and I'll let the rest of you guys think about that. And I'm not going to say any more, but I am going to make a video about it and then give you a proper explanation of what that mystery item is. And actually, I completely forgot about it until recently when I found it. I knew I had it somewhere in my house, and I think it was created out of a practical reason for safety more than anything else. But it's a fascinating little bit of history when it comes to the channel and to some of the items. And it belongs to another item which I don't often wear because it's very large. And it's very, very nice as well. But I'm not going to say too much yet, but I will make a video this week about it. It's in my head and I've not forgotten. And I do love these little mystery items. We've done a few over the years. I think in the vlog series, we used to have a feature called Braggy's Bucket, and I would put out a mystery item. Then you guys had to guess what it was. That was a lovely feature. And at some point I am... at the moment, I'm re-editing all of the vlog series because I want to kind of republish them all again, but this time properly edited, and then carry on afterwards, which is what I'm planning to do. But because I've got so many things going on and a million ideas in my head, it's going to take a little bit of time to get that sorted. I'm halfway through that quest, you could say. And then we can continue the old Viking, vlog series. I'm also going to create it as a podcast at the same time. So Chad M says, I don't want to prod you, but was it to the end of something? Laughs out loud. Yes, you are on the right line. It is to go on the end of something. So you got that aspect of it. But what the something is the mystery item which kind of tells a story, and it's actually quite a fascinating story actually, and I could see it being authentic in the sense of it being used back in the day. But I'm not going to say too much, but I just don't want to give it away. So let me just drink some more of my English or Anglish tea. Oh, that's lovely, that is. So just just give me this week, and I'll publish the video this week. I've not made it yet, but it's in my mind to make that video, and perhaps I'll look for some more mystery items we could talk about, because everybody loves a sense of mystery, don't we? It is inbuilt into our human nature to be curious and to wonder what is that mystery item. But yeah, that'll do for another day. And of course, I got quite a few things on. I got saxes, I got lang saxes, I got axes, I got knives, I got swords. This is, of course, the Anglo-Norman sword. I had a comment the other day about it saying, well, that's not an Anglo-Norman sword, it's a Norman sword. But no, this is a sword that dates from post 1066, and it's an exact copy of a grave find from about the 1080s. So technically, this would be a Anglo-Norman sword. And what I really love about it, and I hope you can get to see the feature on it, is the little beasts on the end of the crossguard. This kind of harks back to the pagan days because it's that animal symbolism. So it's just the little fine details often make an item. And then what you may also see is there's some inlay. So along this section, there's silver inlay. And then along the bottom section, there's silver inlay and 2 silver crosses. And this is a one-off item made by Paul Binns, I believe. I'd love to get Tirkir back on the channel and actually ask him to remind me about where a lot of the items he brought came from, because I can't remember everything, because I bought a lot of these items like 24 years ago when I bought a job lot off him, and I'm glad I did, and I wish I brought more back in the day, but I was limited by the amount of coin I had. So just leave that with me, and that video will be out this week. And as I scratch my head, a very authentic thing to do. This is one of the hats. This is one of Eggle's hats I bought him. The only thing I don't like about it is this kind of a modern tablet weave. It's at some point needs to be covered up with proper tablet weave. It's just slightly modernish for my liking. But what I find amazing about it, it fits my head lovely. And it keeps my head so warm when I'm outside. And occasionally I do wear my Viking hats when I go into Derby. I do wish medieval clothing will come back in fashion, because I'll be wearing it every day. And this is actually, I think, my 5th day now I've been in my kit. We call it a kit, it's a reenactorism. But yeah, so and then probably tomorrow I'll be in my kit. Wednesday, I'm doing some more filming with Halfdan. I'm teaching him about medieval combat, and I'm working on a series about what it'd be like to be a medieval, bodyguard. And Daniel, or Halfdan, is what I called him because of his height. He's 6'8". So I thought, well, Halfdan is a really good name for him. Then I've been talking to Eirik today, and we're thinking perhaps his surname should be Gunnarsson, because Gunnar is the Norse word for, I believe, warrior or fighter. I believe I'm correct on that. I mean, Eirik is far better at language than I am, and I've been asking Eirik for some time to build and make a lot of videos about the language, because then I would learn more. And because I'm wearing so many hats as a content creator, from the editor to the producer, the host, the commenter. I wear too many hats, and I get emails every day from bigger organisations wanting to do collabs and so forth, but I just don't have the time for that. And a lot of the collabs are not really relevant to the channel, because how can you relate the channel to a pair of headphones? You can't. Yeah, so I can't wait until Wednesday to do some more combat. I mean, Daniel is very, very strong. I think he's probably one of the strongest 18-year-olds in the whole of the UK, as he very recently got a UK record for, I think he was on a dumbbell press, he was lifting 62.5 kilos in each hand. I mean, I could probably do 20 kilos at a push, but my God, that's an awful lot of weight, isn't it? I mean, the way he's carrying on, he'll be the world, the UK's strongest man if he carries on. I mean, that'll be amazing. And yeah. So yeah, Leonard, the Old English says you're setting the example. Well, I hope so. I mean, I don't think we kind of created this whole trend back in the day, because there are certainly a few channels before us dressing as medieval warriors, but we have certainly helped within the old medieval world on YouTube. And there's not many channels. I mean, I think within 3 months, I'll have 4,000 videos published. I mean, that's a lot of videos. Although I learned yesterday that the record of a number of videos published by one person on YouTube is over 2 million videos. And that like blew my mind. I think my mind like blew up last night thinking 2 million videos. I mean, how the 9 worlds do you actually manage 2 million videos? That's incredible. I mean, I thought the record would be 20, 30, 40,000 videos, but no, apparently the world record for published videos is 2 million on one channel. And that really does blow my mind, that does. But you know, we all help, don't we? We all play a little part on YouTube, whether you're the YouTuber or whether you're the fan and the subscriber, because it's all a big family. And this is one of the aspects about medieval life which I love, is that kid is so important to us, and family. And certainly my friends are my family, and my family aren't my friends, you could say. But that's often the way in life, isn't it? But you know, I hope they're all well. So just go back some more of your comments. So I'm part of a Viking reenactment group, starting a Viking market in the PNW in the United States. We get questions about people get started. Yeah, I am actually developing a whole series about how to be a Viking, or Viking is the correct way of saying it. And it kind of lines up with how to be an authentic Viking back in the day, but also ties in with how to be a Norse warrior, or even an Anglo-Saxon, because we can't forget the Saxons and the Frisians and the Jutes and the Angles, and it's so important that we don't underrepresent those people, because they are so important, and especially the Frisians, because I think out of the Jutes and the Angles and the Saxons, the Frisians get the less mention, and I think that's such a shame, because the history is so rich. And we do have a few lovely Frisian tales from Turkey on the channel. Now, I've lost his phone number, so I can't contact him to say come back on the channel, but you know, never know, one day. So yeah, so you're starting, yeah, that's amazing, you're starting a group in America. We have a guy on the channel called Sam Stapleton from Texas, who manufactures and makes items. In fact, very recently, a few months back, did unbox some items and not published a video yet. He made me a few arrow heads and javelin heads and so forth. That's yet to be published. But, you know, it's great because, you know, it is a worldwide organisation, and, you know, there's medieval reenactors in, I think, every part of the world, from Australia and probably even in China. I bet there is. But yeah, I think that's fantastic, you know. And then Chad M says, while we can answer a few of them, we can't answer all of them. For newly starting reenactor, there are any online stores that would recommend for people to get started? Well, yes, there's lots. I mean, I would first of all go to Torm, TORM. That's like a medieval or a reenactors marketplace, but within the website they'll have different categories like furniture, clothing, weapons, and then they will recommend traders. I mean, if you want budget weapons like a good sword, you could try armor class. There's normally a waiting list for a few months, but I've got a couple of armor class swords and they're very good. I'm not sure whether Paul Binns is still actually manufacturing swords, because I did look online earlier, but I can't find him. So I've got to do a bit more research to see whether Paul Binns is still going. But I mean, this Celtic Red Merchant, which Martin, the Belfast Viking, highly recommends, and I bought a few things from them. And then generally, if you look at reenactment groups and you go to their website, sometimes in the links they will have links to traders. If you're looking for something really authentic made, you got Wayland Forge, who's based in Leicestershire, a guy called Jason, very nice guy, met him last year whilst I had a look around a Viking reenactment event, which I filmed a few videos but not published and done nothing with yet. So there are quite a few traders out there, and certainly, you know, we want to spread the knowledge. And, you know, anybody asking me a question if they're getting into the hobby, I'm more than happy to give my time for free and to help, because it's all about giving them knowledge. And, you know, I don't know everything yet. I mean, I'm still learning all the time, but that's how life works, and that's how life should be, where we never stop learning and we never stop developing what we're doing. So yeah, we could certainly recommend a few. So I don't know about American traders. There must be some out there. I know there used to be a guy that used to make helmets. I got one of his helmets I bought from Turkey with a full face guard, but it needs a bit of work on. So that's also another guy I got to try to check out and see if I can find him as well. But then again, if you live in the States and you've got a local blacksmith, they're also great people to talk to. There's a guy in England called Hector Cole. He's very recently, with his daughter, been made honourable members of I think it's or it'd be like the Masters of Blacksmithing. There's a whole traditional group of them going back eight or 900 years back to the medieval times, and he's been made and I think it's the first time somebody's been made an honourable blacksmith, like a master blacksmith. So Hector Cole is another one. You sometimes see Hector Cole over the years on Time Team, so that's another name you should think about. There's White Rose Armory that make armour, but they also will make swords and axes for you. And I've got some Roman kit by White Rose Armory. They're from Sheffield, and of course Sheffield is infamous for steel. So yeah, I mean, there's Jelling Dragon. I think they're still going. That's a UK-based trader, but a lot of the traders, they will buy kit, and it comes from India or China. So, if you're looking for the top end, stuff, then you have to be prepared to pay good money. I think Paul Binns is still going, because I was talking to a guy last year who just spent about £1,000 on a sword to have made. So he must be still going, but it's very, very expensive because it's top quality kit. If you're looking for the Rolls Royce, or if you're looking for like an average kind of like a Volvo, that's kind of just related it in the sense of, you get kit which is like the best kit you could get. You could spend thousands on a helmet, or you could spend £100 and just get yourself a budget helmet. But then again, an awful lot of reenactors make their own kit, like myself, over the years, and that is something I really desperately want to get back into, is crafting. But because I've got so many things going on behind the scenes, you could say, I've still not quite got to that stage yet where I feel comfy enough to start crafting and making things. But that is something I do want to do, and I'm probably going to start off making some hats on video. But a lot of it takes organising, and I'm not the most organised of people in the world. But just bear with me. If I'm thinking about it, it will happen. So yeah, hey, if you're ever in the States, come visit us. We'll love to have you. Well, thank you very much. I will remember that. I've only been to the States twice. That was in 1999. When me and my friends took part in, I think it was the 137th reenactment of the Battle of Chattanooga in Tennessee. And then in 2001, we took part in the 138th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. And being English, all the Americans loved us because, they think English people, American Civil War, they don't think about it. But yeah, it's such a big thing, and was in the UK. But when I was in the American Civil War Society in the UK in the 90s, there was probably over 2,000 of us in one society. It's not so big anymore now, unfortunately. We're probably lucky to have a couple hundred people in the society, because reenactment has become quite costly to a certain degree, and it's not massively widely advertised. But yeah, thank you. I mean, the amount of places we've been invited to, and it's a damn shame Eggle isn't here, because it would be nice when the channel blows up if we could have took him all over the world. I really wanted to take Eggle to France and have him talk about World War I and World War II, because he really was an expert on that whole entire aspect of history. But Eggle was just history all round. He was so well read, and yeah, I really do miss him. But at least we're keeping his memory going, which is important. I mean, if you're looking for sources for good information about being a Norse warrior in reenactment terms, you could look at the Vikings Reenactment Society. They have a good source of information. Regia and Glorum have a very good website, which I used to belong to in the 90s. And there's some very good articles on that website from their very infamous reenactment group have been around. I think, well, I've got to be from the 1970s, because there's been reenactment since the 60s. I had an old friend of mine who was reenacting World War II in 1963. So, it's not far from the war, was it? So it does show you how far back in history it goes and in our time. But it does make you think how far reenactment does really go back. I think it probably goes back much further than that in history, but we just don't often think about it. We often think about the golden age, the 1990s, you could say, is the golden age of reenactment, when it kind of got to its peak. And you do meet some amazing people, and I certainly have. And of course, well, you guys are amazing as well. So yes, I'll definitely remember that. And then Chad M says, oh, for sure, our reenactment group is composed of a lot of Civil War reenactors and mountain men. It's kind of neat seeing all of the Civil War tents being repurposed to Viking Nordic tents. Well, this is what that sign is. That's my Civil War Regiment HQ sign. And then in the evening, because we're English and we like to practice drinking, I organised and formed the Temperance in Training Society, which was a society of reenactors that got together in the evening, and we was trying desperately trying to give up drinking, but we failed. And it's just a play on words of the old temperance movement. Oh, we failed so badly because we used to get completely drunk, and those were the good days. So that just harks back to my American Civil War days. And I do have a lot of American Civil War kit. Yeah, if I get my car back working again, I'm thinking about rejoining the American Civil War Society. So what would you guys think if I started talking about the American Civil War? Because, luckily in my room, I've got quite a lot of American Civil War uniforms. I've got 2 entire big chests full of uniforms. So that's something I might think about as well, because I don't want to just fundamentally stick to medieval history in the long run, because the channel is going to become bigger than what we are now. But I want to incorporate, the Bronze Age. I like to go and try a little bit of Neolithic reenacting, and go to these amazing events and perhaps do some see or not and during the Civil War for a little bit. So we'll see. Yeah, and I think I've used my Civil War A-frame as a Viking tent. You do fundamentally get away with it if you change the metal pegs to wooden pegs. But there's not much of a difference, really. And then Chad M says, rowdy men without the booze laughs out loud. Well, yes. It's just our national hobby. And I like it when I go down to my local pub, which the building goes back to 1160. So it's nearly 800 years of history. It's pretty amazing. And I was down there the other night, had some lovely beer. But I can't video in the pub because they've got a very strict no mobile phone policy, which is such a shame, because you guys would really love it. But, any of you guys ever in Derby, you ever want to meet up for a beer or a chat, hang out for a bit, then please do let me know. Because one day it would be great. I was telling my friend who runs the pub, Martin and Marie, said, when the channel blows up, we'll have a channel meet and bring a few thousand people down for the day, and we'll drink you dry. They'll be quite happy at that. But that's something so far I've never done, is a channel meet. I have met a few people, from the channel. I used to meet a guy called Thomas from Derby, Thomas Dale, but he kind of stopped speaking to me. It's a shame, really, because I really like Thomas. he was a gentle giant of a man. And I think the only reason why he stopped talking to me is because I think he just felt so embarrassed about the length of time from the last message to talking to me. I think his mental health kind of got in the way. But I hope he's all right. I've tried quite a few times to send him a message to say hello, ring him in, but there's only so many times that I will try to contact somebody before my mind says, well, I'm giving up. But I hope he's all right. I think on a couple of occasions we did some live streams in the Wetherspoons pub, me and Thomas on the channel. Yes, if I remember. That's going back probably 6 years, I think. So if you have any more questions, any more thoughts, then I'll have to try to plan more live streams. I know I'm very spontaneous with my live streams because I'm coping with quite a few other things in the background, so of my life at the moment. So they're being a very big distraction. You know, ever since my dad passed away, you know, it's 3 years this year, and I've still not been dealt with, and I'm still waiting for the legal aspect of it all to come through. But we're getting there. And I'm sure my late father would be very proud of what I've done on the channel, because, you know, I never would have thought 10, 12 years ago I'd have a channel like this with thousands of videos. I do hope all the videos do meet quality rather than not being, you know, because I try not to spam, but because I can film a lot of content, I think in the probably last 5 or 6 days I've probably filmed a couple of hundred videos I've got to go through. So it does take time. Yeah. So Leonard Old English says, my condolences. Oh, thank you very much. Literally in a space of 12 days in 2023. First of all, Eggle died on the 3rd of July, and then 12 days later my dad passed away. So I had to deal with 2 very important people in my life passing away. And, you know, my dad was 92, so he had a good innings. And he changed a lot of people's lives because he had a very large business and he made a lot of people successful and they've done well for themselves. But and considering that my dad, you know, he grew up in Normanton, which is 3 miles this way. This is where, you know, it comes from the medieval times when it used to be a settlement by the Normans, hence the name Normanton. You know, he grew up in pure poverty, my dad did, in the 1930s. But, you know, that's another story for another day. And I do miss him. So, you know, if you got your parents around still, you know, do take your time to spend your time with them, you know, because one day they won't be here and you can't get that time back. So, you know, do spend it with you. Especially you got grandparents as well. I don't have any grandparents, not for 25 years or more, but so do spend your time, because it's going to be quality time you're going to remember for the rest of your life. And I can't stress that enough. Life is too short to fall out with people as well. The amount of families that don't talk to each other and fall out is so sad, isn't it? But then again, that's been going on for thousands of years. But I think life is too short to fall out myself. But you can forgive and move on. I'll just drink some more tea. It'll be getting cold soon, which is as an Englishman, I still have to drink it, even if it's cold. Oh, not bad. That's Thai food tea. It's not a bad English tea. I think I'm not used to having a beard, so it gets all over your beard. So you get like a second tea dishing it out when you lip your hairy beard with your lips. Tea. Perhaps I should grow a big moustache like Eggle. But I look my age when I'm with a beard, you know, because I'm 50 this year, which is quite scary. But I don't feel 50. I mean, most people think I'm like late 30s, early 40s because I've not really had too much stress in my life. I don't believe in stress. You know, you get stressed and then you create stress to cope with the stress. You get more stress from the stress because you're coping with the stress, and it goes round and you create a vicious circle. And yeah, I mean, sometimes in life we go through stressful things, but you know, most of the time they end up being very tiny things in your life, for a little tiny moment. So, you know, always remember that. You know, these are a few pills of my wisdom. And it's true. I told that so many people, we often worry about very small, minor things in life, which are only going to happen for a very fraction of your life. So why did it stress you out? I just don't see the point myself. Yes. So we had an interesting comment the other day. You're saying that these should not exist when it comes to medieval Norse medieval life, and it's a bit of a reenactorism. I'm open to debate. See, the problem is it's leather. It does not survive being buried, and to a certain degree, we wear these as modern reenactors because you know we like them on our arms. Because trust me, if you've been smacked by an axe on your lower arm, it does hurt. So these are a bit of a reenactorism. But I think they would have had something like this myself personally. But because we don't have the evidence in archaeology, we're not over certain. But I'll say yes in my mind. I mean, these are about 25 years old and they've done me well. If anybody ever wants to pattern for an arm guard, let me know, because I do have a lot of patterns around for things like hats. Everybody wants a pattern for one of these hats. I've got patterns for all of my hats, which I'm happy to share. But it does protect you. If you get whacked by one of these, it's going to make a difference. So we've got a comment here from Teardom. He says, hey, just stopping by to boost the algorithm and to say hi. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you very much. It's very grateful of you to jump in and say hi. And it does help the algorithm. Couldn't quite say that then. And certainly this year, the algorithm's not been superb for a lot of people. And for many years, I mean, this is one of the misconceptions about this channel, is that people think we have scripts. We never had scripts at all for any of our videos. The only time I'd use a script is like on a short video. I put one out yesterday about St. Ortman's tomb, and that is a scripted video, a short video. But 99.9% of the time, we do not have a script on our video because, you know, we just like that raw feel. That was the way I wanted to go back in 2017, and that is the way we have gone as a channel. And that is a very popular way now of filming. I think they call it the granddad method of filming, where you sit in front of the camera and you just talk. So we've been doing that for 9 years now, nearly, and I think we set the trend on that properly. And I think I like the way and the feel. But of course, when you don't have scripts, you can make mistakes. I'm not perfect, but I do try my hardest. We have another comment from Teardom. It says, it's like Gingun Agap. Well, it certainly is. And then Chad M says, I would love some patterns if you're willing to give them out. Yes, I am willing to give them out. You mean, I'm an engineer by trade. That's what I've done for most of my working life. So they'd be very accurate. So yeah, I'm happy to give out patterns. You know, just add me on Facebook. You know, I was just talking to a guy from Italy before this. He wanted to know about where to get saxes and axes from, and so I was talking to him. They're starting a medieval group in northern Italy. I think that's amazing. You know, lovely history, fantastic country. I've been there a few times. You can't wait to go back and film on the channel. And this will be the next stage of the channel, is where I start traveling and I start filming at locations and going to reenactment events and museums and castles. Oh yeah, so just bear with me. It's taking time to get there, but we will get there. Because I fiddle around with my arm guard. But yeah, so yeah, trust me, if you get whacked with one of these on camp without one of them, bloody hurts. So yeah, so I'm more than happy to give out patterns and advise on, you know, the length of cloaks and the different sizes of cloaks, and you know, making a cloak is one of the most easiest things you can make. Well, probably a hat's probably easier, but you know, I can make a cloak in a couple of hours. Dead easy to make, especially if you're using 2 layers of wool. And I can certainly recommend there's 2 or 3 traders in the UK which you can get wool from, so I can recommend them for you. Of course, you will probably be paying some import or export tax, but it's definitely worth it. And you know, there's not enough good sources for wool, but you know, some of the things I make clothes out of is old blankets. I mean, a lot of the old blankets from the 80s and 90s are pure wool, not like today. So there's always a source if you look hard enough for it. But I'm more than happy to, you know, spread the knowledge and to help you guys out, because it's all about, isn't it? It's all about sharing, and it's like when in the American Civil War days, I wanted to recreate the jacket of my regiment, and the amount of times I asked the other companies in America, because there's 3 or 4 companies from the same regiment I was portraying, the 14th Brooklyn, none of them would ever send me the pattern. So it took me about 2.5 years of research to figure out how to make a museum quality piece, which is probably one of the best bits of sewing I ever done. It's over there, but I won't show you today. And there's a part of me that kind of wants to dress up in my Civil War clothes, but there's a part of me which thinks it's still too relevant. And when I think about dressing up as a 14th Brooklyn, you know, we're chasseurs, so we're like infantry, you know, I'm kind of remembered of the 700 plus men that died. So that always plays on my mind. But yeah, so I may think about doing that in the future, and adding a little bit of Civil War humour and a few of their songs, because I do know how to sing quite well. And you know, that's what I miss about camp and reenacting. It's the connections you make. And it was really nice going to an event last year and seeing some guys from the Vikings of Middle England, who are from Leicester, and I thought, very, very good group. There's only a handful of them, like a dozen, but they put on a very good battle display as well. So yeah, I mean, I've done it all really over the years, but I've always been fascinated with the medieval era. And I think partly that is because, you know, as a young teenager, I was questioning some of the Christian values, and I was thinking and looking at, you know, becoming a pagan and going for the alternative route. It felt natural to me. It was calling, you could say. So, you know, I've been a druid, and I've been a white witch, and I went through a whole phrase of trying different things. But in the background, it was always Norse mythology. It was always the Vikings calling me. So this is why fundamentally I started dressing up as a Viking in 1999, because I saw it as a way to honour the gods, and a way to portray that medieval life. And I'm so thankful that, you know, at a multi-period event when there was like 5,000 people getting together, I met a group of Vikings that turned out to be from my own town, and I kind of joined up, and yeah, never really looked back. That's when I met Egil. Egil was my training officer. He was a master at arms, then he became the training officer, and then gradually, as I got trained, I took over. I became the training officer of the group, and Egil took a seat back, because, you know, at that point in his life, Egil was in his 50s and he wanted a more quiet life. I don't blame him. And I'd love to get Neil and Tirkir on the channel to do a video and tell some of the funny stories they have about him. So we have a comment here from Setting Dawn Zero. Does mead have alcohol in it? Well, yes, it does. Yes, it ferments and it creates alcohol from the process. And depending on the, I know, some of it can be very, very strong, depending on the volume of alcohol to the rest of the solution. But yes, mead is a very alcoholic drink. And in fact, I've got 4 gallons of mead. My dad made in 1977 still, which I've saved in a massive glass demijohn. And occasionally I will pour a glass, and it's still lovely. In fact, it's probably not a mead anymore. It's probably more of a mead liqueur because it is quite strong. You definitely know you've had it, and it's got such a rich taste. And I'm very lucky because I've got lots of honey in the house, which goes back to the 70s and the 80s. But I was just digging out a big plastic tub from honey from 1983, and there's probably 50 jars of honey in there got to be sorted out. So I have a lot of vintage honey, and it's not like today's honey, which is so runny and more syrupy and more sugary. It's a real McCoy, or the real deal. The real McCoy basically means it's a real thing. Another English saying. And mead is very nice. Lindisfarne, there's a mead manufacturer on Lindisfarne, of course, infamous for the Viking raid. That's very nice. But the best mead you can buy in the UK, and probably the best mead you can buy, is Moniac, Moniac, Moniac mead. They have a golden mead, and that's to die for. It's and I think it's getting very popular again. There's a guy on TikTok. His name's Sam, and he makes mead. So if you type in, I can't remember the name of his business, but I know he's a mead manufacturer. He kind of started off 5 or 6 years ago as a hobby, and it kind of took over because people love mead, and it's getting so popular these days. And people love heritage, and we're all arcing back for heritage, aren't we? So yes, if you go to TikTok and you type in mead, and I think probably Sam, he's got a beard, very nice guy. I think we did a video a few months back where I think we duetted a video, and I gave him a shout out if I recall. So perhaps if you go to the short section and type in mead, you'll probably find the video, which will give you a reference to his business, and he does very well. There's definitely a skill in making mead, definitely is. So Second Dawn says, what do you think of other pagan gods from different places around the world? Well, I think they're fantastic. There's some fantastic pagan gods out there. I mean, it's like the number of Anglo-Saxon pagan gods that we don't know about and we've forgotten about. It's such a shame. So, and it doesn't really matter what you believe in. As far as I'm concerned, it's the only two things that matter to me is whether you practice goodness and whether you practice kindness. If you practice both those things, then it doesn't matter who you worship or whether you don't worship. But having faith is a wonderful thing, and being a true Norse pagan, it is. And you meet some wonderful people. Pagans are some of the most wonderful people you can possibly meet. And back in the days in the 90s, we used to have moots. A moot is like a meeting of pagans, and they used to be good, and used to make some really wonderful pagan people, all different, sorts of pagan beliefs, whether they might be worshipping druids or maybe more modern into witchcraft, because witchcraft, within the proper term of Wicca, is white magic. It's more of a modern concept, to be fair. But based on the work of Gerald Gardner, I believe. So I've got a whole brain full of knowledge. So I used to be a member of a coven many years back, and that was quite fascinating, studying white witchcraft. It's all about doing goodness and doing good for people. And I got no problem, and I'd love to do more videos about the Norse gods, and the other pagan gods across the world. But there's only so much time and so much energy I have. But so I think wonderful. I mean, I'm probably one of the few people that you probably met and talked to that's been to Israel and Jerusalem, for instance, and Bethlehem. I mean, I have literally walked the steps that the Zweite Kleister walked in Jerusalem before he was crucified. But a fascinating part of the world. I maybe wouldn't go there at the moment on holiday. Fascinating part, but let's not go down the whole aspect of the politics of that. But so it doesn't really matter who you worship, as long as you practice goodness and kindness, because those are gifts and those are free to the world, and they should always be free. And as I often say, anger and hatred have a price. No matter what you say, they do have a price, not only in you as an individual, but on the people around you and the world around you, because it's all interlinked for energy. So, why be bitter and angry when you can be kind and loving, which is the person I am. I love everybody, I really do. And I just want to make the world a better place, because I see it for where it's going, and I see it, and I see two. Well, there's more than two paths. There's two paths, but those paths go into many, many other paths. But we need to go down the right path as human beings to make the world a better place, and more so than ever. I do believe that. Just make sure I not miss any of your lovely questions and comments. Yeah, so perhaps I'll try in the future to do a regular Sunday live stream. It can also depend on my sleep pattern, because I've got what you class as severe insomnia. So I cannot, most of the time, I cannot regulate my sleep. I'm probably not getting enough melatonin, which is why last year I changed all my light bulbs upstairs to red light bulbs to eliminate white light and blue light, which I think has had a little bit of a positive effect on my sleep pattern. But some days, I can be waking up and starting my day at midnight, where other days, at the moment, I'm doing okay. I'm on a good run of sleep at the moment. But when my sleep pattern goes out the window, my creativity goes out the window with it. So when you see moments on the channel where I got a bit quiet, it's because I'm trying to get back to regulate my sleep pattern, and it can take me a whole week to regulate it. And no matter how many times I've been to the doctors about it, they just don't do anything. It's rubbish, really. But then again, are we actually meant to sleep for 8 hours? I mean, back in the medieval times, and only recently, probably in the 19th century, have we fundamentally changed our sleeping pattern. So back in the medieval times, you're more likely to get 2 lots of sleep. So you would probably go to bed at sunset, or not long afterwards, and you might wake up at 1 or 2 in the morning. Sometimes within the Christian times, of the medieval times, when you wake up at 2 in the morning, you may pray, you may feast for a little bit, and then you get some more sleep. And I certainly practice biphasic sleep patterns, where I'll have a couple of hours of sleep in the afternoon and 3 or 4 at night. But the amount of sleep I'm missing over the years, as when I used to care for my dad, because I was a carer for many years, I'm missing, not hundreds, probably thousands of hours I've lost over the years. And I think that's partly had a not only an effect mentally on me, but also physically. But I'm getting there. Every day is a step forward, and it is, sleep in it whole self is a fascinating thing. And it's a bit like walking. We often take walking for granted, but I sometimes think to myself, well, did people walk differently back in the day than what we did today? And there's a couple of very interesting channels that I've talked about walking in the medieval times. It might have been slightly different to what we think today, and I know that sounds a little bit ludicrous, doesn't it? Well, how can walking be different 2,000 years ago? But apparently, yeah, there's some evidence, and some people kind of speculate it may have been slightly different. But certainly sleep patterns were much different in the past, because it's only a very recent thing, since we became industrialized in the West, that we started sleeping for 7 or 8 hours in one go. It makes more sense back in the medieval times to sleep a little bit in the early evening and wake up at the night, and then get some more in the early morning, and then you wake up just before dawn, because you want to take full advantage of all the sun hours. It's because, let's face it, 90% of people, if not 99% of people, survive by growing crops and having land, or attending crops and land of your lord or your landowner. And so most people were in that aspect of thinking, well, we've got to produce food every year to survive. We're not like that. We can get in a car and go to the supermarket and buy 3 months worth of food in one go if you wanted. Even though, we do live in perilous times when, food security is sort of a massive problem within the world we live in. Because if there was any, let's say, Yellowstone went up, or Mount Vesuvius decided to blow itself up, and and we're having a few of these major crises in the world, then food would be a difficult thing to do. Which is, and in the UK we don't fundamentally promote prepping, because I saw a study which kind of says that the average household has probably no more than 1 to 2 weeks of food in. I mean, I'm lucky, I've probably got a couple of months worth of food in my house if I really wanted to. I would not starve for a good while, but at the same time, because I've gone through that whole aspect, and I do at times practice fasting, where I can fast for 30, 40, 50 hours, and I really love it when I get into ketosis after about 18 to 20 hours, because I get a superb spark of energy, even though I've not fundamentally eaten anything. I may still have a cup of tea now and again, but I don't have sugar, very little milk. And that is such an old practice in the medieval world, was fasting, because you had to appreciate where food came from. And so fasting was equally very big in Anglo-Saxon culture. And within the West, we kind of lost that ability to fast because it's been conditioned out of us. But only in recent years have people gotten back into fasting, and it is a really good way to control losing weight, but not just that, it also promotes your body healing itself. So I think it demonstrates that the Saxons were very wise, because they realised that fasting, not only does it stop your food from running out, but it also promotes wellness within yourself. But then again, the Saxons were also fasting because it was part of their Christian culture as well to fast. And we have to a certain degree lost that. But I know there's probably more people fasting now than probably years back in the medieval times, because of the world population has exploded. And there's certainly a lot of evidence and research into fasting and the different aspects of fasting as well. And I can literally go for 2-3 days without eating, and I feel absolutely fine. It's getting liquid down here is the most important thing. But fasting is also very good for you. But, if you've got bad health, do get checked out by the doctor. I'm not a medical trained person, and I must put that across, because, I'm not medically trained, and you shouldn't be fasting if, for instance, you may have a heart problem, for instance. So do speak to your, what we call a GP, a general practitioner, or your doctor. And perhaps that would make a very good video subject as well. I mean, I get so many video ideas. I literally, I got too many ideas and not enough time. And one day it'll be really good when we blow up to actually hire people to edit my videos, to do the filming, and then we can concentrate on more of the hero content, which has always been my plan. Because I'm doing what you call the reverse plan when it comes to YouTube. I want to build up a lot of videos, and then concentrate on more bigger videos. But that's all going to happen in time. I often have to remind myself it's not a race, even though some days I feel like it's a race. But then sometimes I think about, well, I got to think about post-death as well. What happens to the channel when I die? So, I think I do have some videos published for many, many years from now, so that the channel does not die. But I'm a long way from that, because I am, apart from mentally, I am in very good health. So, do you have any more questions? Is there anything you'd like to ask? Please let me know in the comments below. If any of you guys can remember any of the catchphrases being used, because I'm trying to remember some of the catchphrases. Like Eggle used to say often, "Who'd have thought it?" That's definitely got to end up on a T-shirt at some point. And I've definitely got to try to concentrate on the merchandise. Not that I've ever sold anything, but then again, when my friend Adrian came around the other day, I was talking about the merchandise. He was saying, "Well, have you got any merchandise yourself?" Well, actually, I don't. I never really had the money to have my own merchandise. But I think at some point I would invest, so that you can see me wearing one of the Northworthy T-shirts, and then we could try to advertise ourselves through that as well. No, I'm just de-rusting this lethal thing. This is like a utility tool my friend made many years ago. It's lethal, this is. It's because it's got such a thin edge. I mean, you can hardly see it on camera. It's razor shot. I thought I've got 1 or 2 scars on my hand when I was cutting meat and stuff. So this is a very dangerous sharp knife, but it's a really nice knife for cutting bread and your meat. But like a lot of things, it just needs a little bit of oiling up. Of course, back in the day, you know, the Saxons and the Norse would be using animal fats. They would not have the ability for stuff like this. I mean, if you went back in time and showed them that, it'll completely blow their mind. They'll probably call you some kind of a witch and probably, you know, burn you alive. Especially during the later periods. And today I've made a video about in Derby we have a stone. It's like a stone column, and back in the day there would have been a cross of stone on it. This goes back well back to the medieval times, but in 1665, when the plague came to Derby, it was known as the vinegar stone or the headless stone, and then people used to meet there and they would trade for food. But of course, when you got a situation where the plague is spreading, people did not want to make contact with each other. So they would there'll be like a bucket of vinegar, and they'll put the coins in vinegar and then put it on the stone, and then they'll pick up the goods from the person trading, and then pick up the trader will pick up the coin. So very recently, just today, I did a video about that. I think that's a fascinating bit of history. I mean, most people in Derby, you know, they'll walk past it and they'll not see it and not know of the heritage. And I know it goes way back further than 1665. I do believe originally it could have been an Anglo-Saxon cross, and at some point it's been stolen or knocked down and reused in one of the local buildings. But so that should be out this week at some point. Yeah, so that's another item oiled up. That will last a while. Good. It's going to take me a while to go through all these weapons. We'll have this one next. Let's have a look. Now this one here. Yeah, so this sheath here does not go with this knife, but it's the only one I've got, and this is a lethal weapon. This is it's another utility tool really for chopping bread and meat. It's made from a machete, so if you can get a machete, then you can convert them into very nice axes, and it's got a very nice bone from a cow. It's a leg bone. It's got a nice bit of patterning up the back and a little bit of ring and dot, and it's fastened on with a copper rivet. And this does need a bit of treatment. I used to do a lot of crafts with this, like debarking wood and stuff. And we did demonstrate it the other day, chopping a bottle in half. But I don't like to use it too often whacking things, because I'm just too fearful that one day it will take too much and it will break, and I'll be heartbroken, because my old friend Thorwolf gave me this knife. It's the knife that goes with, so I've got to bend over this. Oh, it goes with this one. So these two knives are a pair of knives, came together. Both came from my late and great friend Thorwolf, who died of COVID during the pandemic. I really do miss him. I'm sure Tick here misses him as well. And he was such a knowledgeable guy. And a damn shame he's no longer with us, because he would have been great on the channel and I would have invited him on somehow. But, you know, these are the things that happen. So another thing I can do with my little block, I can just put a bit of oil on that as well. So, yeah, so back in the day, they would have used animal fats to maintain and to keep their equipment from rusting. But it does make a difference. And I've got some bad scars on my hand from this as well. I got one on my finger when I sliced it, and it went in about a good half inch, and my skin was all flappy. But being a man's man, I just put a plaster on it and carried on battling. I didn't think nothing of it. I probably should have had some stitches, but it did heal. So you can spend an awful lot of time in the winter time doing this, and they would have done as well. Or maybe you're rich enough and you may have, you know, one of your servants, or even worse, one of your slaves do it. But then again, everybody in Europe was taking slaves, and that's a whole entire subject for a whole entire different day. If people are joining the live stream now, they're probably wondering what I'm doing. I give you a look down. You can see a few of the weapons on my table. I've got knives, swords, lances, axes. I don't know how many I own. I mean, there's literally, I own probably too many, but I want more, please. Especially, you know, if you make items and you're a trader, then please do think about sending them for free on the channel. We'll give you a very good review, and I'm fairly certain you'll get some business out of it from all of our lovely subscribers, because there is a massive thirst of people wanting to get into dressing as a Norse warrior, or not just that, but also living the life, you know, because, you know, being a Norse person and especially a pagan, it's about having honour. It's about not lying to people. It is about not breaking your word. What I mean by that, you know, if you say to somebody, yes, I will be there tomorrow, then you should be there tomorrow, and then not go around and say, sorry, I couldn't make it. So, you know, we don't like gossiping. I can't stand gossip. We don't like rumour mongers. This is fundamentally the same thing, you know. Backstabbers. We don't like that in our culture. So these are aspects to me which make me more Norse, I'd say. And to a certain degree, you know, would they have thought the same thing? Well, some of them would have done, but some of them probably not. But because, you know, we don't live in those times, it's hard to know exactly what's true. And because we don't have a vast amount of written records, a lot of that information is just lost to time, unfortunately. Yeah, so that's slowly improving. That's certainly better than it was before. But again, you know, you can tell it's a very old blade. You're looking over 30 years old. So, you know, it's not like it's brand new. It's been used. It's been loved. It's been resharpened time after time. And what I love about this is the handle as well. It's such a nice handle in your hand. It's a good lengthy handle. But in combat, when we're fighting with these, especially back in the day, it's, you know, you got to be so careful. You got to have such a good grip, because it's so easy to run your hand up the blade. And trust me, if you're in battle, your hand runs up the blade, you're going to cut yourself, and that's a real bad thing to happen, because your hand's going to be very slippy now. I mean, I've had it myself. When I cut my hand, it's very difficult to grip something when your hand is covered in blood, because it will make it more slippy. So this is why later daggers and knives had cross guards to stop that from happening. But, you know, probably back in those times, they probably had a stronger grip, certainly what I have. Yeah, that's another one done. That'll be all right for now. Let's have a look at this one. This one could do with an oil. This one, again, I used to use this knife for eating with. This was my eating knife, picking up bits of cheese, put it in your hand or your mouth. Or I'd have a bit of cheese here, a lump of cheese, I'd slice it, pick it, put it in my mouth, and do the same thing again. And then you could also do the same thing where you got a bit of bread in this hand and cheese, and you have just enough room for a knife, you slice, eat your bread, do the same thing again. So you'd be eating with your hands, because we often take for granted in the modern world knife and forks, don't we? You know, and we certainly know that the Anglo-Saxons had what you call a spork, which is like at one end it will have a two-pronged fork, and at the other end a spoon. And I very recently saw a video from Todd's workshop, who's reconstructed a pair of these, and that's a very, very good video. And if you ever wanted to buy something, you know, at the top of the range of manufacturing, you know, bespoke handmade items, whether it's a medieval sword or a much later knife or dagger, then I do recommend Todd's workshop. I would really love to own some of his items, but, you know, you're probably looking at less than not far from £1,000 for a sword. It's expensive, but then again, a lot of this stuff and kit, you know, it retains its value. You know, like my Paul Binns sword, they don't go down in value, they only go up. So this knife just need a bit of a clean. I've used this for a lot of debarking willow and ash over the years because it fits nice in your hand, and when you're working nice fresh wood, the bark comes off in your hand. It does. Oh, I got disconnected. That's Loki, that is. So damn you, Loki, disconnecting us from the video. Or Lucky, or depending where you come from in Scandinavia. I mean, we tend to pronounce things the English way, whereas, if we said Loki in Sweden or Iceland, it's slightly different. And there's a very, very good video I saw. If I ever see it again, I'll share it on the community post, where they got a group of these Scandinavians, and there are some from Iceland and Sweden and Norway and Denmark, and they all went through how they pronounce in their culture and country the names of the gods. And surprisingly, there is a slight bit of difference, and I find that to be fascinating. And that was a fascinating, wonderful video. And again, this used to be a Langsax. So this knife is this aspect of a Langsax, and what's happened at some point in its life, it was a combat Langsax, and it's broken half. It's probably snapped. So Thorolf decided to have it made into two knives, and this is basically the back end. It's this section here of the knife, and it's been ground, and then the fuller has been worked in, and he ended up with another knife out of his broken Langsax. So again, that demonstrates reusing, not only in the modern times, but such things would have been done back in the day as well. But probably in the Norse and medieval times, they would have taken the whole knife apart. In this case, he kept the handle off and and they ground it and kept it cool, not to to affect the hardening of the steel. It's probably spring steel, and then it was sharpened up into a sharp knife. And then, so this, I think he said it was 1984 that this knife and the other one date from. So you're looking, over 40 years. It's going to be older than some of you guys, and let's not forget the ladies as well. And I can't stress enough how it's so important that you do look after your kit. And most of you guys are not going to have the problem I have, because I've got a hell of a lot of it. I mean, I got things I've not seen for years in my attic still. I've got to find. And somewhere I'm missing an axe. I've got a massive war axe. You see that on the video. I can't find it anywhere in my house. Somewhere it's either lost in my garden from when I was filming and I left it outside, because I've done that once before when another axe, I think I must have lost it for about a year, and then one day I saw it hanging in a tree in my garden because the tree got overgrown. So I'm hoping, and I'm praying to the gods that that axe is going to turn up somewhere in my house one day. So, and it's not small, it's a big axe. It's one of the biggest axes I own, but yet I can't find it. Yeah, that's definitely improving that. I think that's a bit better. It's better than it was. I like it when it shines on the knife. I mean, can a knife be too shiny? And then I was thinking the other day, you know how we have some of the helmets which are being darkened either through the process when it's been manufactured and it's been heated up during the manufacturing process, or sometimes you could use a chemical. You polish your helmet up so shiny, and then you put the chemical on and it darkens it. It's basically a gun bluing chemical. But I was thinking the other day, well, we often think about the helmets being darker. I mean, when I thought about darkening up one of these helmets, but why don't we see darkened blades? Because one of the aspects of having the metal darkened is it promotes the metal not rusting so much compared to it being shiny. But I do think, well, why don't we have darkened blades? And I think it's probably because they like the shininess of them. Because especially when you're in the sunlight, and this is probably where we get firing and flaming swords from. It's like you got such a shiny sword, it flickers and it shines in the light. And that's potentially where flaming swords and the whole idea from. Because, they didn't fundamentally, soak them with some kind of, fat and set light to them, because that would be potentially dangerous. But I think that's a fascinating idea. And if I get some spare weapons, I might try darkening some of these weapons if I polish them, just to get and see what they're like. But I do prefer the shininess than the darkness. And literally, unless it's like something like this, which has been heated and darkened over time, then most of my weapons are going to have this aspect of shininess to them. So Leonard E. Old English says, I have to get going. Thank you for this live stream. This do hell. Well, thank you, Blue Deer, brother. And we'll see you again. And perhaps one day we'll have to do a live stream together. I think that'll be fascinating. And I won't be going for much longer because I've got to get my dinner or my breakfast. Then, another day starts, and it's another day to start publishing videos. It's literally the first thing I think about. I get up, I look at my YouTube, and I start publishing videos. Yeah, and Leonard Yard English says, for sure, I like that too. Take care of yourself, my friend. And keep smiling. I know there is a feature on YouTube where you can invite people to live stream with you. And then I noticed there's a feature the other day where you can leave voice notes instead of comments. So I have started leaving a few voice notes on some of the comments, because I think that's a fascinating feature. And I'm really glad YouTube have brought that feature in. Yes, I think we're about done for cleaning weapons for the day. Now, I did see an interesting comment the other day, and the comment was saying, if your weapon is blunt, it's not a weapon, it's a prop. So at what point, because most of my medieval weapons are blunt, they're there for combat and not to hurt each other. So at what point does one of these stop being a prop and become a weapon? Because, it may be blunt, but you can still hurt somebody with one of these, especially with a blunt axe. That could be very lethal in the right and the wrong hands. So I think it's fascinating to think at what point does one of these stop being a prop and becomes a weapon? Because fundamentally, these are props. We certainly went through a period on TikTok where we had to call all of these props. So if you see one of the old videos where we're saying, oh, these are props, it's just a prompt to YouTube, to TikTok, because they used to take those videos down unless I said that this is a prop. And the one thing we could never do on TikTok is run your hand across your blade. Because as soon as we did that in a video, and this is like demonstrating how blunt it is, they will take it down, regardless of the fact that the knife isn't sharp. But TikTok has improved quite a lot over the years. I'm not a massive fan of TikTok. I do publish videos on TikTok, but I'm always will be a YouTuber primarily. So, yeah. And I know in the UK, the BBC are trying to get YouTube as part of the TV license. And I'm highly against that, because as a content creator, I don't believe that I should have a TV license to watch my own videos back on YouTube. If, for instance, I wanted to watch a video to make sure that it's okay to be published, or I'm looking for a part of the video which I could make into a shorter video or shorts video. So I'm massively opposed to YouTube being part of the broadcasting license, because in the UK you have to buy a broadcasting license, and they keep sending me annoying letters saying, oh, we're going to send somebody around to inspect your house, but they got no chance of that, because I'm not even going to answer the blooming door to them, let alone give them my name. So yeah, I mean, it's not often we talk about modern things on the channel, but I'm highly against in the UK having a TV license. Overall, I think the TV license should be got rid of myself, because the BBC are not as good as they used to be. and I tend to call it the British Bias Corporation, or even worse, the British Bullshit Corporation. Pardon my French. We don't often swear on camera, but let's not forget most of our swear words come from Saxon or the Norse. Hey, they did invent good things. So yes, so I would hate to see that happen in the UK, and I'm definitely opposed to that. So this knife and this helmet came from Maxim Armories. It took me about 6 months to a year to get them off him, because I bought them thinking they'd be in stock, and no matter how many times I kept on emailing and even rung him, in the end I had to threaten taking him to court to get him, and I believe he's now packed in. So I do avoid Maxim Armories because there's far better manufacturers out there, and I don't think he's trading anymore because I think he's got such a bad reputation now, and it's a shame. It's a real shame that happened, really. So, you know, if you're a trader, for instance, you know, only sell what you've got and don't sell what you don't have, because there's nothing worse waiting 6 months to a year, unless it's a really bespoke and a one-off item, which I don't mind waiting a year to get a Pacific made helmet for myself made if I wanted something quite unique, for instance. But yeah, so there's very good traders out there and there's very bad traders. So I'm going to have to change that picture. It's too shiny, isn't it? There's my hand. That's a random part of the video live stream. Yes, do we have any more comments before I do decide to, you know, wind down for the day? It's nearly 10 o'clock. God blimey. It's past my bedtime. No, not really. I didn't go to bed until about 2 o'clock last night because I went through and answered about 4 months worth of comments I've not replied to. If he left a comment and I've not hearted it or liked it yet, I really do apologise. Is that, you know, you can often get overwhelmed with comments. I do, and it's becoming a little bit easier with YouTube now. That I think they're realising that they've got to do more support for content creators so that we can try to comment and leave comments on all your comments and not ignore them. This is partly why I like the channel being small, because at the moment with 13,000 subscribers, I can cope. I think only 18% of my audience is subscribed. So if you are watching this later on, do make sure you are subscribed to the channel. It is free. We don't have a membership page. I most probably will never have a membership page because I just don't really want to start charging you for extra content. But whether I will change my mind and thinking on that, I don't know. But that's only going to happen with better organised structure to the channel and having somebody edit my videos and have people working for a team. Because like I said, I often get comments from people wanting to collab and sponsorship, and they're saying, you know, I can't believe it's just you running this channel on your own, and it is. It's just me, you know. I wish I could claim myself and then I could split the work a bit. But, you know, that's not going to happen, is it? And would you want to see a clone of me and have 2 of me? Well, I think one's enough in the world. But, yeah. Yeah. Any more weapons? Look, what have we got? Oh, what have we got down here? Oh, look. I just found Germanic saps. There's another one. Oh, I've got them all over the place. I think at this next week I'm going to film a video about this sax, which is one of my latest sax, which came with this sword and the 2 axes. So that's going to be a video next week. I've got to film. Oh look, there's this one here. This used to be my favourite fighting sax because it's got such a lovely handle. It's so thin. When I used to be a spearman, I could hold it against my spear and then drop my spear and go straight in for the attack. But a lot of societies have stopped that now. They've banned it. You're not allowed to have a spear in your hand and a knife in the same hand. And then also what I used to do is in my shield hand, I would just have this knife in my shield hand because it was so handy because I can hold it, I can hold my shield and have the knife in, you know, there as well, so that I can very quickly grab it and use it. So, you know, I think I'll demonstrate that on camera. In fact, I'll give this a polish as well. And I think I paid £15 for this, about $20 back in 2001 or 2000. And I'm really glad I bought it. It was one of my favourite knives. In fact, at one point when we was doing a training weekend in a massive wood, it fell out because I until very recently, when I have made a sheath for it, which is halfway finished. I got to cut along it and finish it off and make it into a proper sheath. I used to have it tucked in my boat, and I lost it. And then pretty much like the next day, I found it on the floor, and I was so thankful that I found it, because this could have been lost forever. And the amount of Normans and Saxons I've taken out on the battlefield with this knife, and it's really tough as well. It's a good well-made knife. And I just love the little handle, because it sits in your hand. It's not the best handle, but it's ergonomic. It fits well, and it could have been a little bit thicker, but I liked it because it was so thin, because I could hold it against my spear shaft. So imagine this is a spear shaft. I can hold my spear and fundamentally hold my knife at the same time, whether it's on the blade or on the handle, and then I can just drop my spear shaft and go straight to my knife very quickly. Because believe it or not, if you're well trained with a sax, then you can take out a swordsman, unless the swordsman is very well trained and is faster than you. But even then, now and again, you'll still get those guys. Yeah, then it's just about, just trying to get a bit of effort and trying to, polish it out. That's got rid of a couple of marks. It all helps. This could be a regular live stream feature where I maintain my kit. I've certainly got a little bit of sewing to do and sewing repairs. Yeah, so it's been 2 hours. Just check for any more comments. And my battery's doing okay, so that's lovely. So this has been a very good test, this has. So I am at the point of the live stream where I'm going to say good night, or gnot in the old language. Thank you very much for joining me on this live stream. Thank you for all the lovely comments and support. The best way you can help the channel is to share our content, because I'm really rubbish at sharing things. Occasionally I share things on Facebook, but I don't really share things to groups. And so if you're on Facebook, if you're part of medieval group pages or history pages, do share some of our interesting videos or any of our short videos. And please do look at and watch our long form videos, because it'd be really nice to become monetized, because doing this costs money, and trying to become full-time. If I go full-time, I can concentrate on make much better content for the future. And until we meet again in another live stream, it is a goodbye from Bragi. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.